Okay, so we're back again. Another request put in asking about the audio system in Unreal. And I just want to preface this video with the fact that I am running on the 0.2 version of Unreal right now, and they're releasing 0.25 pretty soon. It's in preview right now, and they have a whole new audio system they're kind of uncovering with that. So this video uses some of what was labeled as experimental features at the time, which are being fully implemented in Unreal 4.25. Just to kind of give you a heads up there that there are some experimental audio features here. That being said, to activate those, you will just go to Edit in the top left, Plugins, and then along the left-hand side here, there's an audio category, and some of the ones I am using, I believe it's near the end here. Let me double check. I'm using the synthesis and DSP effects, which is in beta as of right now. I did use time synth at one point, but I'm not going to show that in this demo. And sound utilities is very important. That's the new sound engine that they're kind of swapping over to in 4.25. At least part of it is. But once you have that activated, it'll ask you to restart the engine, pop it up, you'll be good to go. This video, I'm going to go over a couple different things, mostly directional audio and the basics of audio, kind of how it's implemented in Unreal. The first bit will be on a project I'm currently working on, kind of the last project I touched audio in heavily, and it's all about generative audio. And then later on, I'll kind of go over some basic audio with wave format, making cues out of it and stuff, but that'll be near the end. I'll stick a timestamp down in the description. If that's what you're here for, you can jump straight to it and not worry about everything else. That being said, let's get started. So this is going to be my audio emitter, this cylinder here. It will turn into a square during runtime. I just have it set up to swap meshes. It's just how the project was. But yeah, it'll be a square once I start. But how this works, it uses a attenuation, however you want to pronounce. I don't know. Attenuation, I believe, is how it's pronounced. But it uses some attenuation. Let me pull this over here for you. And this just goes over how the sound travels through the air, basically. And it gives it a fall off, gives it different features that you can kind of tweak to your own desire. Biggest thing is the distance and spatialization. It gives it a 3D audio feel. That is very important for any type of spatialized audio when you want to have it kind of directionalized. So just as a heads up, if you watch this video with headphones, it'll make it a little bit easier to follow along with and just kind of understand the effect that we're getting. But if I go ahead and hit play, you'll be able to hear. It's a very synthesized noise. I mean, it's made out of a digital synthesizer. It's all from scratch. Nothing's being brought in externally. But it is 3D, so if I turn the camera around, it rotates around to the right ear and back of the head kind of thing. But it is out of that square, so if I move away, it will start to get quieter. Here, let me kind of run away. And it does, it dithers off based off of tone as well. As you can tell, the higher pitches will travel farther than the lower pitches will. It's just how sound carries in general. I did a good job at simulating that in here as well. And the sound is based off of my player speed as well, so it'll speed up when I'm running. And then when I walk, it'll slow down. And the key changes as well. If I'm moving towards it, it's major key. When I'm moving away, it changes to a minor key. So yeah, I'm going to bring the blueprints over here and we'll kind of run down through it. This does look like a lot, I know, but a lot of it's just kind of the same thing over and over again. So we'll get into it here. To start off, at event begin play, I set some timers here. These timers kind of run a function. You can set it to loop if you would like to. It's just kind of the best way to run a function if you needed to start a begin play, to use timers instead of calling the function directly and things. It gives you a little bit more control over it as well as to different aspects of it. This 16th note timer, I do have a tempo node plugged into it, which dictates the speed, and this just kind of triggers every 16th note of a measure. I did this pretty mathematically here. And check player distance just checks to see if the player got farther or closer since the last time it went off, and that changes the key. And then I have this is where the synth comes in. I have a make modular synth preset, and this, when you expand it, has a whole bunch of settings. And this is, if you're into digital audio at all, this is a whole bunch of synth settings. One of the biggest thing here is this patches array. This, you just have to make a plain array out of it for this to function properly. Everything else is fair game. You can do whatever you like with it. Then you set your synth preset. I made a couple of synth presets. I made a regular like high-end synth, then a bass-end synth, and they both have different presets to it. And I also made a snare synth for kind of the crackled snare hit that you hear. So yeah, that's just 3 different synths that play. One's the bass notes, one's kind of the melodic notes, and one's the snare hits. Player distance function I was talking about earlier just gets the player distance. Compares it to the last time it checked the player distance, and if it's closer, it sets back a bool one way. If it's farther, sets back a bool the other way. Now here is this play sound. This gets called every 16th note, I believe. I'm trying to remember here. Actually, we have bass, snare, and chords. Play sound is like the general function. Sorry about that. It's the general function each one calls, and it basically gets that, gets a synth, gets the tone that's needed, whether it's the major or minor key, and activates the note for that synth. And then it just kind of loops itself here. And that's the main melodic sense of it, I believe. Set tempo is based off of the player speed. This just gets, all this does is it determines if the shift key is down or not, because that was my sprint button. If it's down, it starts a timeline that I believe is like 1 second. So it increases to a new tempo or decreases to the old tempo over a second. Now here are my main note functions here. Here's the 16th note. This has a sequence that goes off. So basically, every time this is called, it calls all of these. Bass, snare, chords. Also calls the 16th note function again. This is just so it's not set to looping, and it reassigns the tempo every time. It also will reset the tempo after that, which this should probably come first. But either way, this gets called so often it's not a huge deal in this instance. And then at the end here, it just increases the beat. So this is to count measures. Beats, starts on beat 1, just to make it easier for me, 1 through 17 I have it set right now, so it counts through there. It probably should be 16, thinking back, but it's what it is. But yeah, basically if it's, this is 17, yeah, so this checks to make sure if it hits 17, resets back to beat 1. My bad, I do have it right. Okay, so then here are the bass, snare, and chords values, functions, sorry about that. And this just basically gets whatever beat it's on, and this is so you can assign different notes to different beats. So I want the bass every 2 beats. So it just grabs every 2 beats, plays a bass note, gets the value of this tone, so whether it should be major or minor, plugs it in, turns the note on. Same thing with snare. I have it on either beat 5 or 13, and that goes through. And remember, this is in 16th notes, so it's just however I wanted to plug it in at the time, whatever beat I want to come out of it. So it plugs in, turns the note on, has a 0.2 second delay, then turns the note off, just because I do not want this note to drone on at all. The bass note, I do have a duration set to it, so it will hit and trickle off in 0.25. But the snare I wanted to hit hard and then turn off immediately. And then chords I have not created yet. And then down here is just the get bass value. So this determines, basically this gets the value whether the player is running or not. Wait a second. Sorry, it does not do that. This was an old function that needs deleted. Please ignore that. My bad. Okay, but yeah, so that's this jumbled mess in a nutshell. It really is just a generative synthesizer. And a lot of these variables I've made public. So if you go into the editor and click on the item, you can see on the right-hand side, you have your synth settings. So your octaves for each oscillator, plus its type, and here the keys, major and minor, these are made out of MIDI values. So 60 is C, E, and then G, I believe. I don't know, I am not a music major, but I believe that is C major. And then C major bass is just lowered down, but you can also do that by changing the octave. Found that out after the fact, so I did leave the array in there just to be utilized. But yeah, that's generative audio in a nutshell. Now we'll go over using standard audio of Unreal, how to kind of make a sound from start to finish, and plug it in. So let's make a simple explosion sound with Audition here. Get it loaded up real quick. So let's just do a multi-track session. Did not want to do that. I wanted to do an audio file. My bad. You want to do a 16-bit float. You don't want to do 30-bit, 32. Unreal takes in 16-bit wave files. So there we go. This is started up. Stereo setup. And the best way to do a lot of sound effects actually is just to generate some noise. And I use brown noise for explosions, things like that. It just turns out really well. So if your brown noise has a lot more of a deep tone, you can see here at the beginning, a lot higher on the lower ends, then the higher ends die off quite a bit. So there's a pretty deep tone. So we'll apply that. Then we'll get an EQ on it. Do a 10-band graphic EQ. And we'll just boost the bass up quite a bit so it kind of snaps off. We're doing more of like a stylized explosion noise. This is just for example, so we'll cut off the high ends completely. Okay, it's cutting out a little too much, clipping a bit, so we'll bring it down. There we go, apply. It should not be this long, so what we'll do is we'll just, nope. Delete all that, and then just pull this pin in, and that fades out the end. It's still a little too long. Let's see here. Make it 1 second long. And fade out. A little too short, but I will use it just for this example, just to show you how to use wave files. This is not really a good file, but I'll show you how to use them. So do explosion.wave. Documents, yep, and export. Got it here, import. 1 second here. Okay, so it imports in here as a wave. You can hit play, it'll play it real quick. Big thing to keep in mind is you hardly ever want to use a straight wave file in your game. You always want to right click it and hit create queue. This makes an audio queue for you. And this gives you a lot more options here. So let me pull this up. This is what the wave file looks like when you open it. There really aren't, I mean, there's options here, but it really doesn't give you much in terms of modifying anything else beyond that. The queues themselves, you get a lot of options here, and it's a full blueprint. One of the best things that I have found to use is actually there's a random node that you can do. And so if you have multiple sound effects, say for walking, you can plug them in and then take that output into there, and that will just randomly pick one of these files here. And you can just drag wave files from the content browser into here. So say I want another explosion, you can drag it, drop it, plug it in, there you go. And it'll just randomly pick one or the other. So it comes in handy. And these you can attach to just about anything. You can, in any different blueprint, let me grab the third person character blueprint, you can either spawn sound, which spawns the whole cue there, or play sound. Doesn't add anything into the scene, it just plays the sound and it instantly kills it, so it doesn't leave anything in the world. I always do it at location, especially with a player or anything like that. If you're doing some sort of like music or background sound, definitely just do play sound in 2D, not at location. But here you can just click select asset, always hit the cue, get the location. You can just do a get actor location or get player location. I mean, we are in the player, so get actor location, self, and then you can just attach it. So this is going to play it as soon as we start the game. See, there it was real quick. So simple as that. That's how to play a sound in a game here. And you can attach an attenuation to it. So if I go back to sorry, give me 1 second, explosion cue, go through here, let's see here. Yeah, here it is. Sorry, it's about halfway down the page here on the left. You can take attenuation settings, and then if you have one set up, you can pick it. This one is for the sound that I had before, the pillar in the middle there. So, but you can just apply it there, and it's as easy as that to add 3D spatialized sound to a WAV file. You just put it in your attenuation file, then apply it. And you can check that if you want to do custom attenuation here, then you don't even need a file. You can just go through here and change the settings however you want, and it's this whole category here. It's kind of strange that this is in the middle, but that's where it is. So if you want to access any of these other features, you just check that box, and then you can use any of these other features here. But there you are. I hope that helps. I hope I didn't ramble too much for you, but go ahead and cut it off there, and any questions or anything, leave them below. And like always, I'll either reply with an answer or make another video to try to explain if it's something a little more detailed.